Hello. So, been a while, yada yada. I wanted to talk about an album, kind of two albums, that have been on my mind lately. And it's no surprise that these albums have been on my mind if you know anything about what I've talked about on this channel. But I want to talk about Vultures 1 and 2. Now, Vultures 1 has been out for a while, and I never made a video on it. And actually, I would say I never felt much at all for that album. As far as dislike or like. I felt nothing from it for the majority of my time since it's come out. And that's why I didn't make a video on it. I haven't even listened to it that much. I haven't thought about Kanye. I haven't talked about Kanye for a while now. Maybe that's just me. I know he's had there were some songs I liked on the album. There were some songs that were hits that were all over the place. People were really talking about him, and it's definitely not like it came and went without anyone talking about it. But personally, since Dolla 2 for me, I've been separated from the Kanye conversation, from the conversation and the music, for my own well-being. I didn't like the music. It's been so long that he's had such a muddled and problematic moral compass. And I think this has happened to a lot of people who've just been like, I'm walking away. It's too much. I'm done. I'm not taking it. I can't take it anymore. And I completely get that. And at first, I had no anticipation for Vultures 2. Probably didn't even think it was going to come out. Then it came out, and I was like, okay, I'm going to listen. I'll give it a listen. I wasn't expecting much. And I'll say what I got is worse and better in different ways than I expected. It was that Vultures 1 is definitely Kanye's most hedonistic, and if you ask me, his most morally corrupt piece of work. I mean, throughout his entire discography, Kanye has been... Just look at if you want to know the direction of Kanye's career since 2010, just look at the cover of Life of Pablo. He's basically been living that for as long as most of us can remember. Every album has been kind of centralized around this idea. Which one? What he represents on one side, God, his family, and the hedonism on the other side. And Vultures 1 was as hedonistic as Kanye has ever been. And I want to say this, that I might be wrong. And if people have a lot of opinions on Vultures 1 and want to tell me about them, I'm totally down to hear about it. But I didn't feel much emotional connection to anything on Vultures 1. And that's really what made me say, like, I don't have anything to say about it. I'm not even going to think about it or talk about it. Not whether it's good or bad, but they just felt like there was nothing there. There's nothing of value coming out of Kanye. But I think now that Vultures 2 is out, and I have this Vultures 2 to view right next to Vultures 1, I see that there's more to Vultures 1. I'm not going to talk about the whole album, but I do want to talk about the final track, King, in reference to what comes on Vultures 2. Vultures 1 and 2, in a lot of ways, are kind of like the separate halves of Life of Pablo or something like that. Vultures 1 is him completely high on the hedonism. King is probably the most despicable track I've heard by him. He directly mentions all the controversies he's been in and says no matter what, all his latest, if you don't know, his latest controversy has probably been the peak of his despicableness, and I think most people would agree. The amount of people who have left Kanye's wing, who are done with Kanye from a listener's perspective, is more than it's ever been. Despite the fact that it's kind of always been like that. since Life of Pablo and Yeezus, it has constantly been this old and new Kanye discussion. And Vultures 2, if anything, has got so stacked against him as far as where his fans are. It's more than ever before. But on King, he says he's still the king, despite all of the things he said, the hatred he has encouraged. It's horrible. I'm sure I don't want to excuse that in any regard. It's horrible. And I think this track was what made me feel like this is evil. So what I would call evil. What he's saying there. Divorce, anti-Semitism, doesn't matter. He's still the king. And that's Kanye's Manic. At the top as we've ever seen it. If for those of you who don't know much about bipolar disorder, it is, maybe this is pseudoscience, but I've heard this from a lot of sources, that it gets worse as you get older, especially if it's untreated. And Kanye is untreated. I think he's almost 50 years old now. And we've seen album through album, his mental state has deteriorated. And at the end of Vultures 1, on this pivotal moment of the album, on King, he says he is fine. He feels like he's on top of the world. He ends this album full with misogyny and just stupid catchphrases, and just almost grotesque sex talk, if you ask me. I'm not trying to be a prude or anything, but it's more than it is more disgusting than any hip hop I've ever heard, and that's partially why I don't. Knowing where Kanye is and as a person makes it even worse. You know, you can listen to a Future album or something like that, and it's kind of feels disconnected from Future as a human being when you hear him talk about sex and drugs. But to hear Kanye do the same thing, it feels like he's putting on something and he's unwell. He doesn't know how to handle what he's doing. So we take King, that's where it ended, and we go into Vultures 2. I don't know, whenever you're watching this video, I don't know if the album has changed, but as of August 7th, the album is still a complete mess. Everything about it feels unfinished. There's I don't know for sure, but I know there's been talk about how there are many verses on this that are AI. And as with every Kanye release in the foreseeable since Yeezus, it came out. Was it going to come out? Was it not going to come out? We have these patch notes for the album. Is this song going to make it? Is this song going to get changed? It was a mess. So I want to talk a little bit about each piece of the album and how I kind of went from laughing at how terrible it was to feeling a connection to this emptiness, hopelessness, hollowness that Kanye is showing on this album. First thing I want to say is that the tracks Slide, Time Moving Slow, Field Trip, I like these tracks. As of right now, August 7th, they sound better than they did at the release date. There was a patch since then that fixed some of these songs. These three tracks, I think, sound good. For Kanye. You know, for a lot of people, I'm sure they're just like, no, it doesn't. He sounds terrible. But if you're someone who kind of has personal, not even just personal stake, but likes what his performances from Donda on, there's something to get out of this. Ride is kind of like the sequel to Carnival from from Vultures 1. I kind of like Carnival. I think it's a good song. Fried is worse, and really just sounds like this attempt to capitalize off of the popularity of Carnival. Um, Sounds just as ridiculously sexual and misogynistic as that one. Like, I don't know. It's This one's gross. This one is probably more gross than Carnival. Kanye's talking about like referring. I don't know. Just go listen to this track. Listen to what Kanye's saying. It's gross. It's laughable too. But it's kind of. I think Kanye takes it seriously. He thinks what he's saying is cool, and that's of part of seeing that connection from Carnival to this is like Kanye trying his encore of all that attention he got from Vultures 1, trying to capitalize that and be like, yeah, look at this, I'm on top of the world again. But I think what he doesn't realize is a lot of people are laughing at him. A track like Carnival is laughable in a lot of ways, just in how ridiculous it is. This track is the same way. I don't know. It kind of, I would say, even though it's not a very emotional track, it kind of fits into the themes that I think are present on this album, where Kanye's saying he's not trying to tell you something. He's trying to show himself. This is what always makes Kanye so interesting, is that he doesn't know what he's doing. He just puts it out there, unfiltered. You know, he loves to talk about how he's like real. He's unfiltered. And I'm not even saying that's a good thing, but it's an interesting thing. I think that's part of what makes people gravitate to his music. It's not healthy for him, and I think that's part of the point. We're all looking at this. People have reactions to everything Kanye does, and it's either you feel bad for him, you hate him. So much of his life for so long has been a public performance. Everything he's done. His ego is fed by the fact that he's a public performance. And I think by this point, by Fried, it's not like, I don't think anyone can look at the track Carnival and then hear Fried and think like this was done in an earnest attempt to make good music. He's a 50-year-old man talking about just a very vulgar way of describing women. It feels sad. Nothing about it, like, you're not going to just put on this song and feel like, oh yeah, it's a banger. It feels sad. Everything about this album feels sad. Like, I don't know how you could listen to these attempts to capture pop Kanye. Really the sound of the life of Pablo, where he's mixing trap with his own style to capture people, the young people. I don't know how you can buy into it without hearing how sad it sounds. The next track, the track Isabella is like 8 seconds, and Promotion is okay. It feels kind of like a nothing track. Don't really have much to say about it, but the track Husband. So when I first listened to the album, Husband was, and you know, this I kind of stand by, I would say it's Kanye's worst song of all time. Like, he hasn't released anything worse than Husband. Because, and you know what, maybe it's just, I think part of my dislike for it is fueled by finding it morally reprehensible. I have to admit that. I try to listen to music without disliking it just because of morals. I want to give it its shot and its perspective. But I couldn't help that on my first listen of Husband. I was like, this is just disgusting. The domineering nature Kanye is talking about, and how a husband and a wife should be bonded. It's definitely not something I agree with. Not to mention the fact that it's just kind of a weird track. It's kind of this very soft instrumental with Kanye almost whisper singing about being a good husband, talking to women and telling them how to be a good husband. So I was almost laughing at how ridiculous it was on the first listen. But I will say, on the second, third listen, there was more to it. I was thinking more about why I like Kanye when I listen to his albums, because he's showing where he is, and I relate in a way. I relate to his bipolarness, because I can see maybe how I could be in a state like this if I had been suffering for so long without any help. On Husband, Kanye is showing how deeply alone he feels. For those of you who didn't know, outside of the 2 minutes on Husband, on the back half of the next track, Lifestyle, Husband comes back. And there's another 3 minutes of Husband tacked onto the next song. And it's so weird. Like, how did that... Was that intentional? How could that be intentional? Why? But, funnily enough, I kind of appreciate how weird and abnormal such a duo of tracks is. Lifestyle is a completely different song. Probably it has a little bit more energy, but then it just cuts back into Husband. Kanye talking about how a husband and wife should be, it's about his loneliness since his divorce with Kim. For those of you who, I know a lot of people don't even buy into Donda, they don't like it. Personally, Donda is my favorite album of 2021. But in a lot of ways, it's been very difficult for me to go back and listen to that album because of seeing where he is now. So the track that always comes, and if I hear it now, I'm gonna cry. There's no doubt. If I listen to Come to Life, the final song off of Donda, I would cry. But I think I would cry even more knowing now what has come after. Listening to these songs, listening to Husband. So much of the Donda era for Kanye was him feeling like he found something. When you're depressed and going through bipolar depression, it feels like he's on the top of when he's found something. He's figured it out, he feels like. That's why I think a lot of people say, they're like, oh, Donda would have been such a great closure to his career, which I think is really funny, because maybe they're right. If Kanye's life is a story, then Donda is a pretty perfect ending, but Kanye's life is not a story, and life isn't a story. Kanye's a real life, deeply, deeply flawed human being whose life did not end and will not end when he feels like he found what he's looking for, like on a Come to Life, on all of Donda. Everything he's done since then has been lonely and him feeling hollow, just trying to grasp at what he had in the past, because he doesn't feel like he has anything else. That's what Husband feels like to me. It's deeply upsetting to listen to, for many reasons. And I don't think that changes. On the next track I want to talk about, Bomb. Bomb, like Husband, I was just dumbfounded with when I heard by how bad it was. It started off kind of strong, kind of was digging the beat, and I was kind of like, oh, what's this vocal sample? Could be interesting. But it doesn't go anywhere. It's just that, and then you slowly realize that it is indeed Kanye's children singing and rapping over this instrumental. And I don't know. I think some people be like, oh, it's cute, but it just sounds so bad. Bomb just sounds so bad. I don't want to listen to a 5-year-old or a 3-year-old rapping and singing. I think it's is London one of his kids? No, Chicago. One of his kids, Chicago, is talking about how they love the beach, they love the sand, and it's like, that's great. But why is this on this album? I don't want to hear about this. It just sounds silly. I don't want to go watch Yo Gabba Gabba. I know it's for kids. I don't want to listen to it. I'm an adult. But on re-listen, there's something more I kind of got out of this track. And it's when I paid attention to the background where you hear Kanye humming. And it's just the difference between where his kids are at and where he's at is goes back to all I've been saying about how this album feels weird and hollow and depressing. Kanye sounds depressed in his hums. He sounds like he's just coasting, like he is on a lot of this. He's coasting on his talents. Listening to his kids, who are so young and full of so much life, and he's trying to be there with them, I think. He wants to be there with them to show that they can all make music together. He wants his kids to understand what has allowed him to survive up to this point in his life. He's gotten through everything because of music. And he's struggling to keep up with them, despite the fact that they sound so happy and full of life. Kanye sounds dead and depressed. And it's upsetting to listen to. The next track, River, is another one. This is one of my favorite tracks on the album, River. I think Young Thug does a great job on this one. Before I continue talking about it, I also wanted to mention I really liked, I think on Lifestyle, that was the one with Lil Wayne's feature. And I thought Lil Wayne sounded really awesome. I thought he sounded great. And I kind of like that song. I do think there's some interesting beats and interesting ideas on a lot of these tracks. But if you listen to it when the album came out, it sounded like a mess. Like everything, I don't know. I'm not a mixing or mastering. I don't know much about it. But I think even someone who doesn't know anything about that could tell that this sounded incomplete. Like every track sounded incomplete. Even if you like parts of it. Now it sounds a little better. And I'm sure it'll sound even better in the future. But I'll just have to keep seeing. But to get back to the track River, I really like Young Thug's part. But I really want to talk about what Kanye's saying on this chorus here. He says, too much money to be in the streets, too much money to spend all on me, too much hate and not enough love, free Larry, free Young Thug. Now maybe the words themselves don't say much directly, but listening to the track, Kanye sounds upset and sad and depressed on these words he's spitting. And what I haven't mentioned about those first couple tracks is that Kanye, just like on Vultures 1, he's trying to attain this youth and project this youth, talking about sex and drugs and alcohol. He wants to be young. He wants to... And you know, he has a lot of these younger rappers on the album. This is what he's kind of done for a while, where he feeds off of the young talent in the hip-hop industry, and gets them to portray their greatest strengths on his songs next to him. And he's trying to do that again. He's trying to capture that youth. But he can't. He can't feed off of that anymore because he just sounds old. He sounds like he's fading away. And you know, Vultures 1 and 2 are so clearly the opposite of something like what he was going through before, like his complete turn to religion on Donda and on what's it called, the one that's so boring, and on Jesus is King. It shows the flip that he's gone through, because he's just looking for something to ease his pain. He's so convinced it's God one moment, a couple years later he's convinced it's drugs and partying again. It's very upsetting to hear. It's very upsetting. The track that really caught my attention on this album, the only one that really did on my first listen, I thought most of it was a mess and trash. The track 530, from what I've been reading online, it's not it was leaked a while ago. It's from Donda 2 sessions. So I think maybe some people who've been hearing the song for years now, maybe it doesn't have the same effect as it did for me. But as I was kind of mentioning at the beginning, is like I've been kind of distant from Kanye's music, the Kanye discourse, and the Kanye leaks, so I haven't heard this song until the album released. But 5:30, the sample on this is beautiful. Kind of captures old Kanye feel, and it's very catchy, but also very tranquil, I would say. But this verse, and you can kind of tell that this verse is from a time in the past because Kanye's talking about Kim, and it's been a few years since his divorce. But I think if you even talking about husband is it's about Kim, even if it isn't in direct words about Kim. It's still something that affects him. He feels almost trapped from that era. And that's why I think as someone who loves Donda and feels so emotionally connected to Donda, it is extremely upsetting to see Kanye stuck. He's been stuck for a long time because he's been used by the music industry, used by the people around him, used by grifters, used by right-wing idiots. I just want to say, he's a grown man though. You can't blame it all on other people. He has made these decisions. And to a certain point, you have to just realize, okay, this is what he wants to do. I'm not going to stick around and find out what happens next. And I think that's what's happened to a lot of people in Kanye's life. And now he's just left with those people looking to take advantage of him. On 5:30, he's talking about his relationship with Kim. And I will say these lyrics are probably some of the best he's had. I would say that this first verse on 5:30 is his best verse since Donda. He's talking about alcohol and how his dependency on alcohol has really affected his life with Kim and his life after Kim. Now on first listen, I really like this first part of 5:30, but I was just so frustrated with how unfinished the back half sounds. It's 2 to 3 minutes long of Kanye mumbling and droning away on this almost like childlike instrumental. And at first I was just like, oh my god, why wouldn't he cut this? Why would he keep this on the album? And you know what? Excuse me. I think I realize now why it's here, and it serves a purpose, even though it sounds bad. It is Kanye after this verse, drunk, mumbling, and it kind of shows how messed up his thoughts are now. They're not coherent anymore. That's how far he's kind of gone. That's how far mental illness has taken him. He's angry. He's envious. But most of all, the most upsetting part about this back half of this song is that he's incoherent. He repeats things over and over again. He brings up a lot about... I mean, if you've known Kanye, you know that he has some weird obsession with Drake. And the interesting thing about this back half is he mentions other artists too. Artists that he worked with on this album. He talks about Future and Lil Baby, who are on this album. So it's just interesting. Like, why is he telling Kim to go listen to them instead of him? What is it? How is that a diss if if a couple of these two artists he mentions has respect and has worked for? What does that mean? I think it relates back to the idea that Kanye sees more... He's jealous of these artists in a lot of ways, what I want to say. Even though he works with them. And maybe in some regard, that is why he works with them. He's jealous of the attention. I think the way it works for him is that he sees the acclaim they have, but he doesn't see the pain they have. Like, he sees them handling themselves way better than him. They're hip-hop artists too, but they are able to keep it together. So I think that is why he's jealous of Drake in a lot of ways. Despite the fact that Kanye is definitely a narcissist, and Drake probably is too, Kanye is cracking more. And I think if you like Kanye, you kind of realize that too. That's kind of part of why you like him. He's more real than a lot of the other artists in hip-hop who kind of project their success and their on top of the world feeling very confidently. It's that insecurity is why he's saying all of this and mumbling it all, why he's even thinking about all of this. So I find the track 530 really interesting. It's kind of what turned me around on this album to say, wait, it might be terrible, it might be a mess, but I think there's more to it than that. I don't have much to say about the track Dead. It's kind of one of the more forgettable tracks on this album. And so is Forever Rolling. The thing with this album is that this is going to sound really harsh, but despite there are two things on this album: messy but interesting, or boring. So there's a lot of boring, not a lot. You know, if this album was mostly just tracks like Dead or Forever Rolling, I probably wouldn't have anything to say about it. I would kind of be on the same side as people who are like, this is hollow. But not in the hollow way I'm talking about. Hollow in the way that there's nothing here. I first listen, that's what I thought too. I was like, okay, it doesn't feel like anything interesting is going on here. The track after Forever Rolling I do want to talk about, though. I have something... This is a track that I have known way before Vultures. Sky City, or City in the Sky, if you've known the song since 2019 like I have, is from Yandhi Leaks. This was one of the more popular songs on the Yandhi Leaks, and I was just so surprised to see that it was getting an official release on Vultures 2. Like, how does this song relate to where Kanye is at now? Like, how does it make any sense that this is on this album? And the truth is, it doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense. It doesn't even... The sound of it is so removed from this album. I would say the sound overall on Vultures 2 has a very interesting influence from Vaporwave on a lot of these tracks. Partially trap, a lot of trap influence, just like Vultures 1. But unlike Vultures 1, it doesn't sound crisp and well thought out. It sounds like a mess. It sounds hollow. But it also has this kind of bit crushed feel to it. On the other side of the tracks. Doesn't really... City in the Sky doesn't sound anything like either of those. The Yandhi era had its own sound. And it just feel... And you know what? When Hurricanes came out on Donda, it was a different song. It was a completely different song in a lot of ways. This is the same. It's exactly the same as it's been since 2019, this song. There's nothing new to it. Why is it here? I don't know. But I think it kind of feeds into this narrative about where Kanye is right now. He doesn't know where he is. He is so lost. He is looking in his past. He's looking in a lot of different directions to find something that make him feel alive on this album. You can hear he's looking to his contemporaries. He's got Lil Wayne on this. He's got Future on this. He's looking to his contemporaries and looking to find some life from them. And from trap. From modern hip-hop. He's looking towards his past on a track like City in the Sky. And, you know, even 530 is his past. He's talking about his time with Kim, which has been in his past. It's a couple years ago now. And alongside that, he's looking to his kids on Bomb. He's trying to sing with them and live off of their happiness, because this is part of what keeps him going. So when I hear City in the Sky and I hear it's no different, it just was tacked on. It feels like a corrupt song. It's not supposed to be here. I shouldn't be hearing it in this context. It has nothing to do with any of this, but maybe that's the point. It sounds so larger than life and soulful, especially on the featured vocals from 070 Shakes, or 070 Shake, who hasn't collaborated with Kanye in a long time. She's another one of those people who are like, yeah, I'm not sticking around for this guy. She was a big part of what the Ye era represented. And Ye, in a lot of ways, I see Ye as very similar to Donda, where it's Kanye kind of looking for life. He feels something, and he's trying to express that feel, but he's looking for something, and he can't find it. So I guess, in a lot of ways, it's the same thing as now, only much darker. It's been a long time since Ye, and he hasn't found it. He's lost a lot, too. And if you've read anything about this album lately, you know that Kanye has had a lot of things go on to validate the fact that he sounds so empty. So he takes the song, and this verse that mentions Kim as his wife, makes these little jokes about COVID. It's like, Kanye, it's 2024 now. It's not 2019 anymore. It's not 2020. Why is this here? And I don't know what the answer is. Will this album see fixes? Yes, but does that really matter? Does it really matter if the album sees fixes? If Kanye himself is as messed up as this album is? The final track I want to talk about is My Soul, as it's the final track of the album. And My Soul, I think, shows a lot of similarities to the Donda era, because it's got this choir, I believe it's a choir sample, and these kind of elevated lyrics. Even Dolla on this track in particular makes a lot of references to God. It sounds like a different era of Kanye too. And what I really want to mention about Kanye's verse on this song is how messed up his head is. And you can just hear, it's so clear on the ending of this song. Kanye in so many ways relates politics and relates what he sees in reality to what his life is, and he wants them to be the same. And he talks about on this track, he says, mass incarceration, mass in police stations, mass incorporated. Fuck Adidas. How is that the same thing, Kanye? How is your relationship with $1 billion company getting your $1 billion deals for shoes the same thing as mass incarceration? And it's kind of, this is maybe in a lot of ways his most pathetic moment on the album, because of, you see how he's so broken he cannot see anything else than himself. He says, look at how black people have been disrespected and mistreated. It's just like how me, a billionaire, is mistreated by another billionaire company. Like, he's missing it. He's missing anything that isn't him. And the further he gets, the more he deteriorates. The more it just seems like he's just mumbling nonsense, and he doesn't know what he's saying or what he's feeling. But he knows he feels bad, and he feels like there's something wrong, and he's trying to find a reason for it. He tries so many different things on this album. He tries to go back to God too, like on this track, My Soul. He's like, why isn't God giving me that fervor that I was feeling before? Because in 2018 and 2019, he was living off of God, that high. It's very common for bipolar people to live off this kind of born again religion. It kind of coincides with a manic state. Kanye is not manic on this album, I would say. This is one of the fewer, it's less common. We've seen so much of the manic. But I would say this album overall is late stage depression from bipolar. And to me personally, this album is a heartbreak to listen to with this in mind. Because I can see how I could end up this way if I didn't receive any help. If I didn't have people in my life. And you know what, I've talked about it in the past too. Kanye does not just deserve an excuse just because he has bipolar. He's hurt so many people. He's encouraged so many horrible things. But I think I can't help but relate with him. After all this time I've related to him, all this time I felt so connected to his music. People want the story to end on a come to life from Dolla. People want the story to end there. We want him to find whatever he needs to feel good. And also find the good music. But the truth is, for most people, they don't find either of those. Their passion becomes nothing, and they're sad and alone, looking for something to grab onto. I felt this way in the past. Yeah, I can relate with Kanye's dysfunction on this album. I think that's partially why on re-listens 530 has the potential to get me choked up. Because I can hear how broken he is. And maybe in 2021, when Dolla released, we thought maybe Kanye is going to be okay. Maybe he's going to turn around. But if you've seen his public, you know what he's like in public, and you listen to this album, it's not true. It's not going to happen. Bipolar disorder is not a joke. I think that's all I gotta say. I hope you'll give this out. If you watch this video, I hope you'll give the album another try. Not because it's good, but because if you're committed to Kanye's character and you're interested in Kanye's character and you really want to get a dedicated look at what bipolar disorder can do to someone, this album is as much an important piece of that as any of his other albums. Thank you for watching.